All right, so we've been poking around and exploring consequentialist theories of ethics, right? Theories that hold that the criteria that we should rely on for judging the moral dimensions of a particular action reside in anticipated consequences. What do we think will happen as a result of taking this particular action? And it's in those consequences that we find the criteria for judging the acts that we actually do. So if I'm an ethical egoist, I might look at all of the available actions that are in front of me and then ask myself, based on everything I know at this given moment, which of these actions compared to the others is the most likely to generate or advance my own individual best interests the most? And by definition, whichever action does that the best is going to be the moral action. And similarly, with the utilitarian, the question is, all right, based on all of the available actions, based on everything I know at this given moment, which do I think will generate the greatest good for the greatest number? And then again, by definition, that action, the one that does that the most, the one that generates the greatest good for the greatest number, that is by definition the moral action. And you can even see this consequentialist strain in libertarianism, right? Where the libertarian is saying, based on all of the available actions and based on everything that I know, which action is going to preserve or promote individual autonomy the most? And then that, by definition, becomes the right action. Now, with ethical libertarianism, we start to get a little bit more into values territory, because unlike the egoist who's just saying, well, I don't know, it's individual best interest, whatever those are, or the utilitarian that says greatest good, whatever the good is, the libertarian is saying, no, freedom, individual autonomy, these things are the values that matter the most. So it's a specific value. Now what we're going to do is we're going to switch gears and we're going to start looking at some non-consequentialist approaches to ethics. The non-consequentialist approaches are going to begin by asserting that what happens as a result of what we do is morally insignificant. The consequences of our actions don't matter, ethically speaking, the consequentialists say. Instead, what's going to matter is the act itself. So that unlike in egoism and utilitarianism, or maybe even libertarianism as well, where the act is kind of a tool that we use to achieve some desired outcome, in non-consequentialism, the act is going to carry moral weight itself. There are some actions that are inherently morally obligatory or inherently morally prohibitive. And two, the non-consequentialist is going to say, and it's not just the action that matters, it's why you take this action. Your intention, your motivations are what matters. So again, non-consequentialist is going to say, I don't care what happens as a result of what you do. All I care about is that you do the right thing and you do it for the right reason. So intention and action. Now the first non-consequentialist we're going to look at is Immanuel Kant. If you took Philosophy 10, Introduction to Philosophy, you probably studied Immanuel Kant, unless you took it from me this last summer because I had to skip it for time, or him for time. But Immanuel Kant is a major heavy hitter in Western philosophy and is such a heavy hitter in ethics that he has his own ethical theory named after him, Kantianism. Okay, so we're going to look at Kantianism first, and then we'll look at some other non-consequentialist theories in the weeks to come. And as you start down this road of exploring non-consequentialism, there's a couple of questions that I'd really like you to kind of ruminate on and think about, talk with your friends, talk with your family, meditate on these questions as you're driving around in your car or going for your walks on the beach. And one of those questions is this: what gives you value? Why do you have value? Is it just because, as the egoist would say, you're sort of this vessel of interests that can be satisfied? Is it, as the utilitarian would say, that you are an experiencer of happiness and contentment and satisfaction? Is that what makes your life valuable? Is that what gives you value as an individual human being? And if not, from where does your value derive? What makes your life valuable? If it's not just you having particular interests or the ability to experience happiness and contentment. So the second question I want you to consider is this: do you have a nature? And this is going to be an important question coming up an important question for us for the next few weeks. Do humans have a nature? Do you have a nature? And I don't mean with this question, do you have your own idiosyncratic personality? Of course you do. Do you have your own quirks? Of course you do. You have a temperament, but that's not really what I'm asking. What I'm asking is this: is that Is there something inherent to human beings? Are there features that are inherent to human beings? For example, I'll give you one to think about. Is it the case that human beings are inherently social creatures? Do we seem to be the kinds of things that do better when we have some kind of connection to others? Or is that just sort of an arbitrary social construct? Is that something that's been kind of imposed on us so that we believe that to be the case, or we've been trained or indoctrinated to feel that that's the case, that we need others around us? Or are we inherently, by our natures, social creatures? Are there particular biological or psychological features that human beings have that kind of define what they are and distinguish us from other non-human types of things? Are there capacities that I have as a human being that are kind of universal to varying degrees to all human beings? And then maybe the flip side of that is, are there aspects of my being that are an inherent part of my being that provide kind of limitations or restrictions on the kinds of things that I can do or the kinds of things that I can be? Are there any biological, psychological features that are inherent to being a human being that limits my potential? And by the, again, the reverse of that is, are there any biological, psychological features to my being as a human that need to be respected in order for me to respect myself as the kind of thing that I am? All right? So do you have a nature? And if so, what are some of the features of that nature? And what gives you and your life its value? From where do you derive value? All right, so those are the two questions to maybe think about over the course of the next couple of weeks. You've got a really typical week in terms of your thought primer. You've got some questions to think about. You want to really explore those questions. Make sure you're giving me your thinking and the rationale behind that thinking. You've got 3 questions to get your brain revved up here. And then you've got some reading to do out of Beginning Ethics and some reading out of Justice. Hopefully you're digging that. And then you can see, of course, you've got this exam part 7. All the questions, unsurprisingly, come from your reading. So have the quiz open or the exam part open as you're doing your reading. And then you've got your stimulating video lectures to run through here. And again, maybe have that ethical inquiry assignment number 1 prompt out with you so that you can take notes. I think there may be some questions on Kantianism on that assignment. If not, there certainly are on the next ethical inquiry, number 2. And you should have exam part 8 open as you watch the lecture so that you can be answering those questions. And then boogie on over to the discussion board where we can have really stimulating discussion. I was just reading posts from folks this morning and thinking like, wow, man, these guys are really interesting. Really interesting stuff got going on there. So participate in our class discussion and have a fantastic week.